The building was too quiet. Brielle Thompson pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway of Whitmore Industries' executive floor, her rubber gloves squeaking against the metal handle. It was 11:47 p.m. and she shouldn't have been there. Her regular supervisor had called in sick, and they needed someone who knew the executive floor protocols. The emergency shift meant extra pay she desperately needed, but it also meant bringing her 5-year-old daughter Aisha to work. "Stay close, baby," Brielle called softly, glancing back at the small figure trailing behind her. Aisha wore her favorite bright red pajama set under a blue winter coat, her braided hair pulled back with colorful clips. The little girl clutched a worn stuffed rabbit and yawned. "Mama, I'm sleepy," Aisha whispered. "I know, sweetheart. Just let Mama finish this floor and then you can sleep in the break room, okay?" Brielle's heart ached. This wasn't how things should be. A 5-year-old should be in bed, not wandering corporate hallways at midnight. But her babysitter had canceled at the last minute, and Brielle couldn't afford to turn down the work. Not when rent was due in 3 days and she was still short. She began cleaning the conference room adjacent to the CEO's office, her movements efficient from months of practice. The glass walls were pristine, the mahogany table gleaming. Rich people's offices always smelled different, like leather and expensive coffee instead of the cleaning solutions that clung to her own clothes. "Mama, can I look at the fish?" Aisha pointed to the large aquarium in the hallway. "Stay where I can see you," Brielle said, watching as her daughter pressed her face against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. 10 minutes later, Brielle moved to the hallway, pushing her cart toward the next office. She glanced around. Aisha wasn't by the aquarium. "Aisha." Her voice came out sharper than intended. "Baby, where are you?" Her heart began to pound. The executive floor was a maze of corridors and locked doors. She abandoned her cart and hurried down the hall, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. "Aisha." She found her daughter standing near the large corner conference room, the one reserved for board meetings. The little girl's eyes were wide, fixed on something through the partially open door. "Baby, what are you?" Brielle started, but Aisha held up one small finger to her lips. "Shh, Mama. The people are playing a game." Brielle peered through the gap in the door. 2 figures stood at the far end of the conference table, illuminated by a single desk lamp. She recognized them immediately: Richard Hayes, the chief financial officer, and Susan Palmer, the VP of acquisitions. They wore business clothes despite the late hour, Richard in a gray suit and Susan in a green dress. But it was their actions that made Brielle's breath catch. Richard held 2 identical manila folders, both marked with red confidential stamps. As Brielle watched, he pulled documents from each folder and swapped them, his movements quick and practiced. Susan stood beside him with a tablet, checking something on the screen and nodding. "The Patterson contract goes in the Morrison folder," Susan whispered, her voice barely audible. "Morrison's terms go in Patterson. When Julian signs tomorrow, he'll be approving completely different vendor agreements than he reviewed. And our offshore account gets the difference," Richard replied, sliding papers back and forth. $3.2 million this time. He'll never notice. The man trusts his executives too much." Brielle's hand flew to her mouth. She grabbed Aisha's arm and pulled her back from the door, her mind racing. She'd just witnessed something terrible. Something illegal. But what could she do? She was a janitor. They were executives. Who would believe her? "Mama, why are they playing the folder game?" Aisha asked in her normal voice, too loud in the quiet hallway. Brielle's blood turned to ice. Inside the conference room, the whispered conversation stopped. "Did you hear something?" Susan's voice held an edge of panic. "Check the hallway," Richard ordered. Brielle didn't think. She scooped Aisha into her arms and ran, her daughter's stuffed rabbit dropping to the floor. She heard the conference room door open behind them, heard Richard's sharp intake of breath. She turned the corner and ducked into the women's restroom, locking the door behind them. Her hands shook as she held Aisha close, pressing her palm gently over her daughter's mouth. "We have to be very quiet, baby," she breathed. "Very, very quiet. Like a game." Aisha nodded, her eyes wide but trusting. They heard footsteps in the hallway. The restroom door handle rattled. "Probably just the cleaning crew," Richard's voice carried through the door. "But we need to be more careful. Finish up and get out of here." The footsteps retreated. Brielle stood there for 10 minutes, her heart hammering, before she dared to leave the restroom. She grabbed her cleaning cart, found Aisha's rabbit on the floor near the conference room, and practically ran to the service elevator. She wouldn't finish her shift. She didn't care about the money anymore. She just needed to get her daughter out of that building. In the parking lot, she strapped Aisha into her car seat with trembling hands. The old Honda's engine coughed twice before turning over. "Mama, are you okay?" Aisha asked. "You look scared." Brielle met her daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. "I'm okay, baby. Everything's okay." But it wasn't okay. She'd witnessed something that could destroy people. Something that involved amounts of money she couldn't even imagine. And she had no idea what to do about it. She was a single mother, a janitor, barely making ends meet. Who would listen to her? Who would care what she saw? The night air was cold as they drove home to their small apartment. Brielle's mind spun with possibilities and fears. If she reported what she'd seen, would anyone believe her? Would she lose her job? Would Richard and Susan come after her? But if she said nothing, they would keep stealing. And that money belonged to the company, to the employees, to people who worked hard for their wages. She glanced back at Aisha, who was already falling asleep, her rabbit clutched tight. "We'll figure it out tomorrow, baby girl," Brielle whispered. Tomorrow. What she didn't know was that tomorrow would change everything. Because sometimes the truth comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the innocent witness of a child carries more weight than all the lies adults tell. Have you ever witnessed something you knew was wrong but felt powerless to stop it? What would you do if speaking up could cost you everything you have? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter of this story. Will Brielle find the courage to speak? Will anyone believe her? The answer might surprise you. Morning came too quickly. Brielle hadn't slept. She'd spent the night pacing their small apartment, checking on Aisha every few minutes, trying to decide what to do. By the time dawn broke through their thin curtains, she'd made her decision. She would go to work, keep her head down, and say nothing. It was the safe choice. The smart choice for someone in her position. Except Aisha had other plans. "Can we stop at the coffee shop, Mama?" Aisha asked as Brielle drove her to the daycare center before work. "The one near your building? They have the cookies with sprinkles." Brielle's paycheck was already stretched thin, but the hope in her daughter's voice made her nod. "Just one cookie, okay?" The coffee shop was busy with the morning rush of Whitmore Industries employees. Brielle waited in line, acutely aware of her position. She wore her custodial uniform, a navy blue polo and pants, while everyone around her wore tailored suits and expensive dresses. She didn't belong in this line, not really. She usually brought coffee from home to save money. "Mama, look," Aisha tugged her hand, pointing toward the door. "It's the tall man from the pictures." Brielle followed her daughter's gaze and her heart stopped. Julian Whitmore, the CEO himself, stood near the entrance, speaking on his phone. He was younger than she expected, probably mid-30s, with dark hair and a sharp navy suit. His presence seemed to command the room without effort. She'd only seen him in the company newsletter photos, always surrounded by other executives at charity events or business conferences. "Don't stare, baby," Brielle whispered, turning back to the counter. "Two large coffees, black," Julian said to the barista, still on his phone. "I'll be in the office in 5 minutes, Michelle." "Yes, I know the Patterson signing is this morning. Everything's prepared." Brielle's stomach dropped at the mention of Patterson, the contract Richard and Susan had tampered with. She collected their order, a small coffee for herself and Aisha's cookie, and tried to leave quickly. "Excuse me," Julian's voice was closer than expected. Brielle turned, pulling Aisha closer. "Yes." But Julian wasn't looking at her. He was looking down at Aisha, who was staring at him with that unfiltered curiosity only children possess. "I saw you playing the folder game," Aisha announced. The color drained from Julian's face. "What did you say?" "The folder game. Last night. You were switching the papers." Aisha took a bite of her cookie, completely unaware of the bomb she'd just dropped. "Aisha, no," Brielle started, her voice panicked. "You're confused, sweetheart. This isn't the same man." But Aisha shook her head, her braids swinging. "Not him, Mama. The other people. The lady in the green dress and the man with the gray coat. They were playing the folder game in the big room with the fancy table." Julian's eyes sharpened with immediate attention. He knelt down to Aisha's level, his expression gentle but focused. "Can you tell me more about this game, sweetheart? What did you see?" "Julian, your car is here," someone called from the doorway, but Julian waved them away. "They had 2 folders," Aisha explained, using her hands to demonstrate. "Red stamps on them. And they took papers from this one," she held up her left hand, "and put them in this one," she held up her right hand. Then they switched. The lady was looking at her computer thing. They said someone's name. Pat, something. "Patterson," Brielle whispered, and suddenly Julian's full attention was on her. "You're the witness," he said, not a question. I'm nobody, Brielle said quickly. Just the janitor. I shouldn't have been listening. Please, I need this job. I have a daughter to support. Julian stood, his expression unreadable. What's your name? Brielle Thompson. Mr. Whitmore, please. I can't afford to lose this position. I'll sign anything, I won't say anything to anyone, just please. How old is your daughter? Julian asked. The question threw her. Her name is Aisha. And she has no reason to lie. Julian's voice was thoughtful. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Michelle, cancel the Patterson signing. Tell them there's a problem with the contract that needs review. No, don't let anyone else handle it. I'll review the file personally. He hung up and looked at Brielle. I need you to come with me. Both of you. Mr. Whitmore, Miss Thompson. His voice was firm but not unkind. If what your daughter witnessed is what I think it is, you and Aisha may have just saved this company millions of dollars and exposed a serious crime. I'm not going to fire you. I'm going to ask you to help me understand what happened. Please. The please surprised her. Billionaires didn't say please to janitors. I have to drop Aisha at daycare, Brielle said weakly. Bring her to my office. I have a children's playroom for visiting executives' kids. She'll be comfortable there. Julian's expression softened. Miss Thompson, I give you my word that you and your daughter are not in trouble. But if what Aisha saw is true, I need to act fast before evidence disappears. Something in his eyes made Brielle trust him. Maybe it was the genuine concern, or maybe she was just too tired to keep fighting. Okay, she said quietly. We'll come. 20 minutes later, Brielle found herself in the CEO's office, a space so luxurious it made her apartment look like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Aisha was in the adjacent playroom, happily building with blocks under the watchful eye of Julian's assistant, Michelle. Tell me everything, Julian said, sitting across from her, not at his massive desk but at a small conference table. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, making himself seem more human. Start from the beginning. Brielle told him about the emergency shift, about bringing Aisha, about finding her daughter near the conference room. She described what she'd seen, the folders, the whispered conversation about offshore accounts and vendor agreements. She repeated Susan's words as best she could remember. He'll never notice. The man trusts his executives too much. Julian's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Did they see you? I don't know. Maybe. We ran. I dropped Aisha's rabbit. I picked it up near the conference room door. Show me exactly where. Julian pulled up building schematics on his tablet. Brielle pointed to the corridor near the corner conference room. Here. Aisha was standing about here when she saw them through the door. And what time was this? Around 11:50. Maybe 5 minutes before midnight. Julian made several calls, each one clipped and professional. Within minutes, his head of security arrived with security footage files. Julian reviewed them, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. There, Brielle pointed at the screen. That's when we were there. The footage showed Aisha standing near the conference room, then Brielle pulling her away and running. Moments later, Richard Hayes appeared in the hallway, looking around suspiciously. Julian switched to the conference room's internal camera. There was Richard and Susan, just as Aisha had described, swapping documents between folders. I'm going to need an official statement from both of you, Julian said, his voice tight with controlled anger. But first I want to say thank you. If you hadn't been there, if Aisha hadn't seen this and told me, they would have gotten away with it. They've probably been doing this for months. I was just doing my job, Brielle said. You were being honest, Julian corrected. In a world where most people look the other way. That takes courage, Miss Thompson. Please call me Brielle. He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Julian. And Brielle, I want to offer you something. A reward for coming forward. Oh no, I couldn't, Brielle said quickly. I just did what was right. Exactly why you deserve it, Julian said firmly. But we'll discuss that later. Right now, I need to secure evidence before Richard and Susan realize we know. Can you stay here today? Keep Aisha with you? I need to know you're both safe while we handle this. The care in his voice surprised her. This wasn't just about protecting assets. He was worried about them. Yes, Brielle said. We'll stay. Good. Julian stood, grabbing his phone. Michelle will make sure you have everything you need. Food, anything for Aisha. And Brielle? You did the right thing. Not just for the company but for every honest employee who works here. People like Richard and Susan steal from all of us. As he left to coordinate with his legal team and security, Brielle sat in the luxurious office and tried to process what had just happened. 24 hours ago, she'd been a janitor, invisible to the corporate world. Now she was sitting in the CEO's office, her testimony about to bring down two powerful executives. And somehow, despite the fear and uncertainty, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. Because someone had listened. Someone had believed her. Sometimes that's all the truth needs. One person willing to listen. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of meetings, statements, and revelations that shook Whitmore Industries to its core. Julian moved with calculated precision, like a chess master who just discovered his opponent's strategy. Brielle had given her formal statement to the company's lawyers, with Aisha present for her part. The little girl had described the folder game, in such clear detail that even the most skeptical attorney had to admit it was credible testimony. No 5-year-old could fabricate specifics about confidential stamps, document headers, and the exact position of furniture in a room she'd never been in before that night. Julian had ordered a complete audit of every contract Richard Hayes and Susan Palmer had touched in the past 18 months. What they found made Brielle's witnessed incident look like a single thread in a massive web of fraud. 11 contracts, Julian said, his voice weary as he sat in his office with his legal team and Brielle. It was late afternoon and golden light filtered through the windows. Aisha was asleep in the playroom, exhausted from 2 days of unusual routine. They've been systematically inflating vendor costs and pocketing the difference through shell companies. The total is approaching $15 million. Brielle gasped. She couldn't even imagine that much money. If Aisha hadn't seen them that night, Julian continued, looking directly at Brielle, we might never have caught them. They covered their tracks well. But your daughter's testimony gave us the probable cause we needed to dig deeper. Everything we found stems from what she witnessed. What happens now? Brielle asked. Criminal charges, Julian's lead attorney James Mitchell said. Embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy. They'll face significant prison time if convicted. Good, Julian said flatly. They stole from this company, from our employees, from everyone who depends on us. I trusted them. His voice carried a note of personal betrayal that Brielle understood. Trust, once broken, left scars. After the lawyers left, Julian asked Brielle to stay. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his normally perfect hair slightly disheveled. How are you holding up? He asked. The question surprised her. I'm okay. Worried, I guess. About what happens next. I meant what I said about the reward, Julian said. Brielle, what you and Aisha did saved this company. More than that, it protected every employee whose job security depends on our financial stability. I want to give you $100,000. Brielle's vision actually blurred. What? No, that's too much. I can't. You can and you will, Julian said firmly. This isn't charity. This is recognition of value provided. Because of you we recovered our losses. Because of you we stopped further theft. That's worth far more than $100,000. But I just told the truth, Brielle protested weakly. Exactly. And the truth is priceless. Julian leaned forward. Brielle, I've done some checking. You work 3 jobs. You're behind on rent. Your car is 15 years old and barely running. Your daughter deserves better. You deserve better. Please let me help. Tears welled in Brielle's eyes. All the stress, all the fear, all the years of struggling came crashing down at once. I don't know how to accept this, she whispered. Say yes, Julian said gently. Say thank you and yes. Thank you, Brielle managed, her voice breaking. Yes, for Aisha. For us. Thank you. Good. Julian's expression softened. There's something else. Your position as a janitor doesn't match your capabilities. I've reviewed your work history. You have an associate degree in business administration, don't you? I couldn't afford to finish my bachelor's, Brielle said. Life got in the way. I want to offer you a position as facilities coordinator, Julian said. It's a management role overseeing building operations. Better hours, better pay, better benefits. You'd have time to go back to school if you wanted. The company would cover tuition. Brielle's mind reeled. Why would you do all this? Because you earned it, Julian said simply. Brielle, I've spent my entire life around people who want something from me. Money, status, connections. You didn't want anything. You just wanted to do the right thing even when it scared you. That's rare. That's valuable. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Julian repeated, and this time he smiled. Yes, Brielle said, and found herself smiling back through her tears. Yes to all of it. Over the next week things moved quickly. The $100,000 appeared in Brielle's bank account, and she cried in the bank parking lot when she checked her balance. She paid off her debts, bought a reliable used car, and put the rest in savings for Aisha's future. Her new position started immediately, with a salary that was triple what she'd been making. She had an actual office, a team to manage, and respect from people who'd never looked twice at her before. But the biggest change was Julian himself. He found reasons to check in with her, asking about her transition to the new role, making sure she had everything she needed, bringing coffee in the morning and sometimes staying to chat. He seemed genuinely interested in her life, in Aisha's daycare stories, in her opinions about building operations. "You know," Julian said one afternoon, sitting in her office while Aisha colored at a small table in the corner, "I've been thinking about getting an aquarium for my home." Aisha mentioned she likes fish. "She loves them," Brielle said. "She talks about the one in the executive hallway all the time." "Would you both like to come with me to pick one out?" Julian asked. "This weekend? I could use the expert opinion of a 5-year-old. Brielle knew what this was. An invitation that went beyond professional courtesy. Julian Whitmore, Billionaire CEO, was asking to spend time with her and her daughter outside of work. And the careful hope in his eyes told her this wasn't about aquariums. "We'd love that," Brielle said softly. Julian's smile was worth everything. As he left her office, Brielle watched him go and tried to understand what was happening. She'd come to work one night as a janitor, barely able to keep her head above water, and now she was sitting in an office with a career, financial security, and a billionaire who looked at her like she was someone special. "Mama," Aisha said from her coloring table, "Mr. Julian is nice." "Yes, baby. He is. Is he your friend?" Brielle thought about the way Julian smiled at her, the way he remembered Aisha's favorite color was purple, the way he made her feel seen. "Yes," Brielle said. "I think he might be." What she didn't say, what she barely dared to think, was that maybe he was becoming something more than a friend. Something she'd given up hoping for years ago when Aisha's father had walked away. Maybe, just maybe, good things did happen to people like her. Maybe honesty and courage were rewarded. Maybe fairy tales existed in real life, even for single mothers who used to clean floors for a living. The truth had set something in motion. Where it would lead, Brielle didn't know. But for the first time in years she was excited to find out. Saturday arrived with clear skies and a sense of new possibilities. Brielle dressed Aisha in a bright maroon dress with white leggings, while she chose a simple blue blouse and jeans. She'd spent 20 minutes debating her outfit before Aisha had announced that the blue shirt made Mama's eyes pretty, and that settled it. Julian arrived at their apartment right on time, driving a modest SUV instead of the luxury cars Brielle had expected. He wore jeans and a green casual shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked Aisha, who practically vibrated with excitement. "We're getting fish," Aisha announced. "And you said maybe we can see the turtles too." "I did say that," Julian agreed, helping her into the car seat he'd had professionally installed that morning. Brielle tried not to read too much into that gesture. The aquarium store was massive, filled with tanks of every size displaying colorful fish that made Aisha press her face against the glass in wonder. Julian followed patiently as the little girl ran from display to display, explaining in great detail which fish were the prettiest. "That one looks grumpy," Aisha pointed at a large fish with a pronounced frown. "Just like my CFO before his morning coffee," Julian said, and Brielle laughed. They spent over an hour there, with Julian asking Aisha's opinion on everything from tank size to filter systems. He bought far more than he needed, including a separate small tank for Aisha's room if that's okay with Mom. "You don't have to do that," Brielle protested softly while Aisha was distracted by the turtle exhibit. "I want to," Julian said simply. "Brielle, I know this is all moving fast, but I need you to understand something. What you did, coming forward about the fraud, it wasn't just about the money. It showed me who you are. And I like who you are." "I'm just a woman trying to raise her daughter right," Brielle said. "You're a woman with integrity and courage," Julian corrected. "Those qualities don't change based on job titles or bank accounts. You had them when you were a janitor and you have them now." His words touched something deep inside her. All her life, Brielle had felt judged by her circumstances. Too poor, too young, too single. But Julian saw past all of that. After the aquarium store, they went to lunch at a family restaurant where Aisha could order chicken fingers and Julian could relax without cameras or attention. They talked about everything and nothing. Brielle learned that Julian had built Whitmore Industries from a small tech startup his father had left him. He'd grown it into a major corporation through hard work and calculated risks. What about you? Julian asked. What would you do if money wasn't an object? Finish my degree, Brielle said immediately. Study business management. Maybe open a community center someday to help other single mothers find resources and support. There were so many times I didn't know where to turn. Julian's expression grew thoughtful. That's a beautiful goal. It's just a dream, Brielle said. I have to focus on reality now. Dreams become reality when someone invests in them, Julian said. Brielle, I meant what I said about the company covering tuition. And if you're serious about the community center, I'd like to help make that happen too. You've already done so much, Brielle protested. I haven't done nearly enough, Julian said, and the intensity in his voice made her breath catch. You saved my company. You exposed people I trusted who were stealing from us. But more than that, you've reminded me what integrity looks like. In my world, everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. You just wanted to do the right thing. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I just did what anyone would do, Brielle said softly. No, Julian said firmly. Most people would have looked the other way. They would have decided it wasn't their problem. You risked your job, your security, everything. For the truth. That deserves recognition. That deserves reward. I already accepted the money, Brielle reminded him. The position. All of it. I'm grateful, Julian. More than I can ever express. Then let me give you more, Julian said. Let me help you build your dream. Let me be part of your life, yours and Aisha's. Because somewhere between security footage and aquarium shopping, I realized something. He paused, his eyes meeting hers. I don't want this to be just about gratitude. I want to know you. Really know you. Brielle's heart hammered. Julian, we're from different worlds. So what? Julian said. Brielle, I've dated plenty of women from my world. They cared about my money, my status, what I could do for their social position. You care about whether I'm kind to your daughter. You judge me by my character, not my bank account. That's the world I want to live in. I have a 5-year-old, Brielle said. I work long hours. I'm not glamorous or sophisticated. You're real, Julian said. You're genuine. And when you smile at me, I don't wonder if you want something. I just feel happy. He reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not asking for forever right now. I'm just asking for a chance. To spend time with you. To get to know Aisha better. To see where this could go. Brielle looked at their joined hands, then at Aisha, who was happily coloring on her placemat. Her daughter deserved a good man in her life. Someone who would be patient and kind. Someone who would stay. One step at a time, Brielle said finally. We take this slow. For Aisha's sake. One step at a time, Julian agreed, squeezing her hand. But Brielle? I'm not going anywhere. When I commit to something, I see it through. And I'm committing to this. To you. To being someone you can count on. The sincerity in his voice made her believe him. They spent the rest of the day setting up the aquarium in Julian's penthouse, which was as luxurious as Brielle had imagined but somehow felt empty despite the expensive furniture. Aisha named all the fish, giving them elaborate backstories that made Julian laugh. Brielle found herself relaxing, watching her daughter play while Julian sat on the floor helping her arrange decorative plants. You're good with her, Brielle observed. She makes it easy, Julian said. She's honest and sweet and sees the world with wonder. Like her mother. By the time they left, Aisha was yawning and carrying a stuffed fish Julian had bought her. In the car, the little girl fell asleep almost immediately. Thank you for today, Brielle said softly as Julian drove them home. For everything. The aquarium, the lunch, the time. Aisha hasn't been this happy in, I don't know how long. What about you? Julian asked. Are you happy? Brielle thought about the question. Happy. Such a simple word for such a complex feeling. I'm cautiously optimistic, she said. You scare me a little, Julian. This whole situation scares me. It feels too good to be true. I promise you it's real, Julian said. And Brielle? You don't scare easily. You walked into my office knowing your testimony could upend your life. You faced down criminals and lawyers. I think you can handle one man who just wants to take you to dinner. Brielle laughed despite herself. When you put it that way? Next weekend. Julian asked hopefully. A real date. Just you and me. We can arrange a sitter for Aisha, or if you prefer, we can do something all three of us enjoy. A real date, Brielle repeated, testing the words. I haven't been on one of those in years. Then I'll make sure it's worth the wait, Julian promised. As he carried sleeping Aisha up to their apartment and helped Brielle tuck her into bed, Brielle realized something profound. She'd spent years believing that good things didn't happen to people like her. That she'd made too many mistakes, started too far behind, to ever catch up to the life she wanted. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe good things happened to people who did good things. Maybe honesty was rewarded, courage was recognized, and integrity mattered. Julian kissed her cheek at the door, gentle and respectful. "Good night, Brielle. Sweet dreams." "Good night," she whispered back. Alone in her apartment, Brielle leaned against the door and smiled. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she believed that maybe, just maybe, her fairy tale was beginning. And it had all started because a 5-year-old girl told the truth about a folder game. Sometimes the smallest voices carried the biggest truths. Sometimes innocence changed everything. Brielle went to bed that night grateful, hopeful, and just a little bit in love. Monday morning felt different. Brielle arrived at Whitmore Industries in her reliable new car, parked in the employee lot, and walked through doors that had once intimidated her. Now they felt familiar, almost welcoming. Her office on the 3rd floor was still a novelty. She had a desk, a computer, a window with an actual view. Her team consisted of 3 supervisors who managed the custodial, maintenance, and security coordination for the building. They'd been wary at first, skeptical of the janitor who'd suddenly become their boss, but Brielle had won them over with competence and genuine respect for their work. "Morning, Brielle," Marcus, the maintenance supervisor, greeted her. "We've got that HVAC issue on the 5th floor. Want to walk through it with me?" 3 months ago she would have been cleaning that 5th floor. Now she was managing it. The shift still amazed her. Julian had kept his word about everything. The tuition assistance was set up, and Brielle had enrolled in evening classes to finish her bachelor's degree. She'd paid off all her debts, moved into a better apartment with a bedroom for Aisha instead of having her daughter sleep on the couch, and even started a small savings account for emergencies. But the biggest change was Julian himself. He found excuses to visit her office daily. Sometimes it was legitimate business, like discussing facility upgrades or reviewing maintenance budgets. Other times, he just appeared with coffee and conversation, settling into the chair across from her desk like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You know people are talking," Brielle told him one afternoon as he sat in her office, supposedly reviewing a proposal but mostly just watching her work. "Let them talk," Julian said easily. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm spending time with someone I find fascinating." "The CEO doesn't usually hang out in the facilities coordinator's office," Brielle pointed out. "This CEO does," Julian said. "Besides, your office has the best view." Brielle glanced at her window, which overlooked the parking lot. "Julian, your office has a panoramic view of the entire city." "I wasn't talking about the window view," Julian said, his eyes on her. Brielle felt heat rise in her cheeks. 3 weeks of these visits, these conversations, these loaded glances, and she still wasn't used to the way Julian looked at her. Like she was something precious. Their first real date had been perfect. Dinner at a quiet restaurant where they could talk without interruption, followed by a walk through a park where autumn leaves crunched under their feet. Julian had held her hand, and Brielle had felt like a teenager again, giddy and nervous and hopeful. The second date had included Aisha. They'd gone to a children's museum where Aisha could explore while Julian and Brielle followed, stealing moments of conversation between her daughter's excited discoveries. Julian had been patient and engaged, answering Aisha's endless questions and helping her with exhibits designed for older kids. By the 3rd date, Brielle had stopped counting. They just spent time together. Julian came to their apartment for pizza and cartoon movies. They went to the aquarium he'd installed in his penthouse to check on Aisha's fish. They had coffee in her office and talked about everything from business strategy to childhood dreams. "I have something for you," Julian said now, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. Brielle eyed it warily. "If this is another check." "It's not," Julian assured her. "Open it." Inside was a lease agreement for a small commercial space downtown. "What is this?" "Your community center," Julian said. "The location you mentioned you'd looked at but couldn't afford. I bought the building. It's yours, Brielle. To do with as you planned. Help other single mothers. Provide resources. Make your dream real." Brielle stared at the papers, her vision blurring. "Julian, this is too much." "It's not nearly enough," Julian said firmly. "Brielle, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me use it for something meaningful. Let me help you help others." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why do you keep giving me things?" Julian stood and came around her desk, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye level. Because I can. Because you deserve it. Because every single thing I give you, you turn into something that helps others. The money I gave you? You paid off debts and saved for your daughter's education. The job? You've improved staff morale and building operations. This center? You'll use it to change lives. He took her hands. You make me better, Brielle. You make me want to be better. That's worth more than any building. I don't know how to accept all this, Brielle whispered. Start with thank you, Julian said gently. Thank you, Brielle said, and then, surprising herself, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was their first real kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Julian was smiling. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, he admitted. Me too, Brielle confessed. The intercom on her desk buzzed. Brielle, your daughter's daycare is online too. They say it's not an emergency, but Aisha asked them to call. Brielle picked up the phone, her heart doing its automatic mother panic despite the reassurance. Hello. Hi, Miss Thompson. Aisha wanted me to call and ask if Mr. Julian can come to career day next week. She's very insistent that he's her, the teacher paused, clearly reading from notes, best grown-up friend besides you. Brielle looked at Julian, who'd obviously heard the whole conversation. He was grinning. Can I? Julian asked hopefully. You want to go to career day at a kindergarten? Brielle asked. I want to be part of Aisha's life, Julian said. If that includes career day, then yes. Absolutely. Brielle spoke into the phone. Tell Aisha that Mr. Julian would be honored to come to career day. After she hung up, Julian was still smiling. Best grown-up friend. I'll take it. She adores you, Brielle said. You know that, right? She talks about you constantly. Mr. Julian said this. Mr. Julian did that. She's getting attached. Good, Julian said simply. I'm attached too. To both of you. The weight of those words settled over them. This wasn't casual anymore. This wasn't just gratitude or friendship or even simple attraction. This was becoming something real, something lasting. Julian, Brielle started needing to be honest. I'm scared. Aisha's father left when she was 6 months old. He didn't want the responsibility. I've been on my own since then and I've been okay with that. I had to be. But now you're here and you're wonderful and I'm terrified that this is temporary. That you'll wake up one day and realize we're just a single mother and her kid, and you'll move on to someone more suitable for your lifestyle. Julian's expression turned serious. Look at me, Brielle. Really look at me. She met his eyes. I'm not going anywhere, Julian said firmly. I've dated plenty of women who were suitable for my lifestyle. Women from wealthy families with the right connections who knew how to navigate my world. And every single one of them was exhausting. They wanted the billionaire, not the man. They wanted the status, not the person. He squeezed her hands. You see me? The real me. You challenge me, support me, make me laugh. And Aisha? She's not a burden or a complication. She's a blessing. I've never wanted kids before because I never met anyone I wanted to build that life with. But with you? With her? I want it all. We barely know each other, Brielle protested weakly. Then let's fix that, Julian said. Move in with me. Brielle's eyes widened. What? Move in with me, Julian repeated. You and Aisha. My penthouse has 4 bedrooms. She could have her own room, a real playroom. You'd have space to work on your degree, plan your community center. We could have dinner together every night, wake up together every morning. Really get to know each other. That's crazy, Brielle said, but her heart was racing. Why? Julian challenged. Because we haven't followed some arbitrary timeline? Brielle, I know what I want. I want you. I want to be part of your family. I want Aisha to stop calling me Mr. Julian and just call me Julian. Or, he paused, his voice going soft, someday maybe something else. The implication hung between them. Something else. Like Dad. I need to think about this, Brielle said. For Aisha's sake. I can't just uproot her life. Of course, Julian said immediately. Think about it. Talk to Aisha. But Brielle? Know that I'm serious. This isn't a whim or a phase. You've changed my life. You and that brave little girl who told the truth about the folder game. You've shown me what matters. I don't want to go back to the way things were before. After Julian left, Brielle sat in her office and tried to process everything. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a janitor barely making ends meet. Now she had a career, financial security, a building for her dream project, and a billionaire asking her to move in with him. Felt like a fairy tale. But fairy tales weren't real, were they? Except maybe sometimes they were. Maybe sometimes the good guy actually won. Maybe sometimes honesty was rewarded, courage was recognized, and love found you when you least expected it. That night, Brielle talked to Aisha about Julian's offer while they ate dinner in their small apartment. Mr. Julian wants us to live with him? Aisha's eyes went wide. In his big house with all the fish? Yes, Brielle said. But only if you want to. It would be a big change. Aisha thought about it with the seriousness only a 5-year-old could muster. Would we still have our stuff? Yes, baby. All your toys, all your books. Everything. And I'd see Mr. Julian every day? Every day, Brielle confirmed. Okay, Aisha said simply. I like Mr. Julian. He's nice. He listens when I talk about fish. Out of the mouths of babes, Brielle thought. He listens. Such a simple thing but so important. Is that all that matters? Brielle asked gently. He makes you smile, Mama, Aisha said. You smile more now. Brielle hadn't realized her daughter had noticed. Does that make you happy? Yes, Aisha said firmly. So we should live with Mr. Julian. Then you'll smile all the time. Later that night, after Aisha was asleep, Brielle texted Julian, we need to talk about logistics. And furniture. And a million other things. But yes, we'll move in with you. His response came immediately, best text I've ever received. We'll figure out the details together. All of them. I promise. Brielle fell asleep that night with a smile on her face, believing that sometimes maybe fairy tales did come true. And they started with the simple act of telling the truth and being brave enough to accept help when it was offered. Her life was changing in ways she'd never imagined. And for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was excited. Moving into Julian's penthouse was both easier and harder than Brielle had imagined. The logistics were simple enough. Julian hired movers who treated their modest belongings with the same care as priceless antiques. Within a weekend, their old apartment was empty and their new life was beginning. The harder part was adjusting to the sheer scale of luxury. Julian's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city that took Brielle's breath away. The kitchen had appliances she didn't know how to use. The bathrooms were bigger than her old bedroom. It's too much, Brielle said, standing in the massive living room while Aisha ran from room to room exploring. It's just right, Julian countered, wrapping his arms around her from behind. This place was always too big for one person. Now it feels like a home. Aisha's bedroom was a dream. Julian had hired a decorator who'd created a space any 5-year-old would love, with a canopy bed, built-in bookshelves, and an art station by the window. The piece de resistance was the large aquarium built into one wall, already stocked with colorful fish that Aisha immediately began naming. Mr. Julian, this is the best room ever, Aisha announced, hugging his legs. Thank you. You're welcome, sweetheart, Julian said, ruffling her braids. But you know you don't have to call me Mr. Julian anymore. Just Julian is fine. Aisha considered this seriously. Okay, Julian. Can I show the fish to my friends when they visit? Absolutely, Julian said. This is your home now. You can invite anyone you want. Watching them together made Brielle's heart swell. Julian was natural with Aisha, patient with her endless questions, engaged in her childish concerns. He'd attended career day as promised, charming the entire kindergarten class with stories about running a company that included a lot of making sure people are happy and doing good work. But the real test came during the company's annual family picnic 2 weeks after they moved in. You don't have to come, Julian told Brielle over breakfast. I know being the subject of office gossip is uncomfortable. We're coming, Brielle said firmly. I'm not going to hide. Besides, Aisha loves picnics. The event was held at a large park with games, food, and activities for children. As they arrived, Brielle was acutely aware of the stares. The whispers. The former janitor now living with the CEO. The fairy tale that seemed too convenient, too fast. Ignore them, Julian murmured, taking her hand. You belong here as much as anyone. Mama, look. There's a bounce house. Aisha tugged at Brielle's other hand. Go ahead, baby, Brielle said, watching her daughter run off to join other children. For the first hour, things were awkward. Brielle stood near the food tables, trying to look comfortable while feeling utterly out of place. These were executives, managers, people who'd never given her a second glance when she cleaned their offices. Then something shifted. Brielle Thompson? A woman in her 40s approached, wearing a friendly smile. I'm Janet Peters, Human Resources. I've been wanting to meet you properly. I heard what you did, exposing the fraud. That took serious courage. Oh, Brielle said, surprised. Thank you. No thank you, Janet said. Richard Hayes processed my last 2 raises. I always wondered why they seemed smaller than expected. Turns out he was skimming from employee benefits too. You stopped that. Other employees began approaching. The IT manager whose department budget had been mysteriously cut. The marketing coordinator whose vendor contracts had been inflated. The security guard who'd noticed discrepancies but hadn't known who to tell. You saved our jobs, one woman said. The company was bleeding money. Eventually there would have been layoffs. You did what most people wouldn't, a man added. You put your job on the line for what was right. By lunchtime, Brielle found herself surrounded by people thanking her, sharing their own stories of how the fraud had affected them, treating her like a hero instead of an interloper. Julian watched from across the park, talking to board members but keeping one eye on Brielle. When their gazes met, he smiled and Brielle felt warmth spread through her chest. He'd known this would happen. He'd believed people would see her for who she really was. She's good for you, one of the board members, an older woman named Dorothy, said to Julian. I've known you since you were a boy, Julian. I've never seen you this happy. I am happy, Julian admitted. Happier than I knew I could be. Good, Dorothy said. Don't let the shark circle. Some people will always criticize what they don't understand. But that woman over there? She's real. That's rare in our world. Later, during the children's games, Julian joined Aisha in the 3-legged race. They came in last place, both laughing too hard to coordinate their steps properly. Brielle captured the moment on her phone, her heart full. That evening, after Aisha was asleep in her new room, Julian and Brielle sat on the penthouse balcony, the city lights spread below them like fallen stars. Today was good, Brielle said. Better than I expected. People see the truth when they're given a chance, Julian said. You're not the janitor who got lucky. You're the woman who stopped a crime and saved the company. That matters. It still feels surreal, Brielle admitted. A few months ago, I was worrying about whether I could afford Aisha's school supplies. Now I'm living in a penthouse, dating a billionaire, planning a community center. It's like someone else's life. It's your life, Julian said firmly. You earned every bit of it, Brielle. I need you to believe that. I'm trying, she said. But Julian, I need you to understand something. I'm not with you because of the money or the lifestyle. I'm with you because of who you are. The man who got on the floor to help Aisha build block towers. The man who listens when I talk about my community center dreams. The man who makes me feel valued and seen. Good, Julian said, pulling her close. Because I'm with you for similar reasons. You make me want to be better. You challenge me to think about how I use my resources, how I treat people, what legacy I want to leave. Before you, I was just building wealth. Now I want to build something meaningful. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city breathe below them. I've been thinking about something, Julian said eventually. The trial for Richard and Susan starts next month. Aisha will have to testify. Brielle tensed. I know. I'm worried about it. I've hired Dr. Morgan Foster, one of the best child psychologists in the state, Julian said. She'll work with Aisha, prepare her for the experience. Make sure she understands she's not in trouble, that she's helping, that she's safe. You've already arranged this? Brielle asked. I want to protect her, Julian said. Both of you. This trial is going to be intense. Richard and Susan's lawyers will try to discredit a 5-year-old's testimony. I won't let them hurt her. Thank you, Brielle whispered, for caring about her so much. I love her, Julian said simply. I love both of you. I know it's fast, I know we're still figuring things out, but that's the truth. I love you, Brielle Thompson. I love your daughter. I want to build a life with you both. Brielle's breath caught. She'd suspected, hoped, but hearing the words made everything real. I love you too, she said. I think I started falling for you the day you knelt down to listen to Aisha talk about the folder game. You could have dismissed her, ignored us, but you listened. You believed her. You believed in us. Julian kissed her then, slow and deep, a kiss full of promise and commitment. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. We're going to get through this trial together. And then we're going to build something beautiful. Your community center, our family, a future that matters. Together, Brielle agreed. That night, lying in bed in Julian's arms, Brielle thought about how far she'd come. From a janitor afraid to speak up, to a woman who'd found her voice and her courage. From a single mother struggling alone, to part of a partnership that felt solid and real. The trial would be difficult. She knew that. But they'd face it together. And after that, they'd build the life they both wanted. A life based on honesty, courage, and love. Sometimes the best things came from the hardest moments. Sometimes one brave choice rippled outward, changing everything. And sometimes, love found you in the most unexpected ways and showed you that you'd been worthy all along. Brielle fell asleep with a smile, grateful for folder games and honest children and billionaires who knew how to listen. Grateful for second chances and new beginnings. Grateful for love. Dr. Morgan Foster arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, carrying a briefcase and wearing a warm smile. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that immediately put Aisha at ease. "So you're the brave girl I've heard so much about," Dr. Foster said, settling onto the floor of Aisha's room where the little girl was playing with her dollhouse. "I'm Aisha," the little girl said. "Do you want to meet my fish? They're named Princess, Bubble, Stripey, and Mr. Grumpy." "I would love to meet them," Dr. Foster said, and Brielle watched as the psychologist spent 20 minutes simply playing with Aisha, building trust before any mention of the trial. Over the next 2 weeks, Dr. Foster visited 3 times a week. She used dolls and toys to help Aisha understand what a courtroom looked like, who would be there, and what kinds of questions she might be asked. She explained that some people might try to confuse her, but that all Aisha had to do was tell the truth about what she saw. "What if I forget something?" Aisha asked during one session. "Then you say you don't remember," Dr. Foster explained patiently. "It's okay not to remember everything. The important thing is that you only say things you're sure about. Does that make sense?" Aisha nodded seriously. "Like when Mama asks if I brushed my teeth, I should only say yes if I really did?" "Exactly like that," Dr. Foster said with a smile. Julian attended several of these sessions, sitting quietly in the corner while Aisha practiced. His presence seemed to give the little girl confidence. She'd look over at him periodically and he'd nod encouragingly. "You're doing great, sweetheart," he'd tell her afterward. "You're so brave." But the reality of what was coming weighed heavily on Brielle. She watched her daughter practice pointing to pictures of folders and explaining the folder game, and her heart ached. No 5-year-old should have to do this. "She'll be fine," Julian assured her one night after Aisha was asleep. "Dr. Foster says she's handling it remarkably well. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for." "I know," Brielle said. "But I hate that she has to go through this. She's just a baby. A baby who might put 2 criminals in prison and help dozens of employees get justice," Julian reminded her gently. "That's a powerful thing, Brielle. Aisha is making a difference." The preliminary hearings had already concluded. Richard Hayes and Susan Palmer had pleaded not guilty to all charges: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. Their lawyers were mounting an aggressive defense, claiming the prosecution's case rested on the unreliable testimony of a child and circumstantial evidence. But the prosecution had more than Aisha's testimony. They had the security footage Julian had preserved. They had the audit trail showing millions in discrepancies. They had testimony from forensic accountants who'd traced the money to offshore accounts. Aisha's testimony was the key that had unlocked the investigation, but it wasn't the only evidence. Still, her testimony would be crucial. A jury needed to understand how the fraud was discovered. They needed to see the innocent witness who'd stumbled upon wrongdoing and had the courage to speak up. "I want you to know something," Julian said to Brielle as they prepared for the trial's start. "Whatever happens in that courtroom, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of Aisha. You both showed integrity when it mattered most. What if they get away with it?" Brielle voiced her deepest fear. "What if the jury doesn't believe Aisha? What if all of this was for nothing?" "Then we'll know we tried," Julian said firmly. "But I don't think that's going to happen. Truth has a way of prevailing, Brielle. I've seen it in business and life. Truth and persistence win in the end." The night before the trial began, Brielle couldn't sleep. She stood in Aisha's doorway, watching her daughter sleep peacefully, Mr. Grumpy the stuffed rabbit clutched in her arms. Julian found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "She's going to be fine," he murmured. "I keep thinking about what could go wrong," Brielle admitted. "The defense lawyers are going to try to make her look unreliable. They'll twist her words, confuse her. She's 5, Julian. She still believes in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. She also tells the truth," Julian said. "That's her superpower. She doesn't know how to lie convincingly. The jury will see that." "I hope you're right," Brielle whispered. "I am right," Julian said with quiet confidence. "Trust me. Trust Aisha. Trust the process." The trial began on a gray Monday morning. The courthouse was imposing, all granite and marble and stern-faced justice. Brielle held Aisha's hand as they entered, Julian on her other side. Dr. Foster met them in the hallway, giving Aisha a familiar, reassuring presence. "Remember, sweetie, just tell the truth about what you saw," Dr. Foster said. "If you don't understand a question, say so. If you don't remember something, say that too. You're not in trouble. You're helping." Aisha nodded, looking small in her bright blue dress. Brielle had let her choose her outfit, and she'd picked her favorite color, adding a red headband for extra braveness. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, employees from Whitmore Industries, curious onlookers. Richard Hayes and Susan Palmer sat at the defense table, both in expensive suits, both looking confident. They'd hired the best lawyers money could buy. But they hadn't counted on Aisha. The prosecution built their case methodically over 3 days. Forensic accountants explained the paper trail. Security footage showed Richard and Susan in the conference room late at night. Company policies were outlined, showing how they'd violated protocols at every turn. On the 4th day, it was time for Aisha to testify. Dr. Foster accompanied her to the witness stand, sitting nearby as allowed for child witnesses. Aisha sat in the tall chair, her feet dangling, and looked around the courtroom with wide eyes. The prosecutor, a woman named Lisa Chen, approached gently. "Aisha, can you tell us your full name?" "Aisha Marie Thompson," Aisha said clearly. "And how old are you?" "5. But I'll be 6 in 2 months." Some people in the courtroom smiled. Aisha's innocence was evident. "Aisha, do you remember the night of October 15th? Lisa asked. "That's when I saw the folder game," Aisha said, nodding. "Can you tell us about that?" Lisa encouraged. And Aisha did. In simple, clear language, she described being at her mama's work, seeing the fish, wandering near the big room. She described the 2 people she saw, pointing them out in the courtroom. She demonstrated how they switched papers between folders, using props Lisa provided. "They were whispering," Aisha said. "Like when you're not supposed to be doing something. Like when I take cookies before dinner and I don't want mama to hear." More smiles from the jury. Lisa guided her through the details. The red confidential stamps. The folders. The tablet Susan was holding. The names they'd mentioned. "Were you supposed to be watching them?" Lisa asked. "No," Aisha said honestly. "I was supposed to stay with Mama. But I wanted to see the fish and then I heard voices. I peeked. Mama says peeking is not polite, but I did it anyway." "And what did you do after you saw them?" "I told Mama. And then I told Julian. Because switching folders seemed like cheating. Like when someone changes the rules in a game so they win." "Is Julian here today?" Lisa asked. Aisha immediately found Julian in the gallery and waved. "Hi, Julian." Julian waved back, his eyes shining. The defense attorney, a sharp-faced man named Robert Green, approached for cross-examination. Brielle tensed. "Aisha," Robert said, his voice deceptively kind. "You were very tired that night, weren't you?" "It was late." "Yes," Aisha said. "I was sleepy. And sometimes when we're sleepy we imagine things, don't we?" "Sometimes," Aisha agreed. "But I really saw them. It wasn't pretend." "How can you be sure?" Robert pressed. "Because I picked up my rabbit afterward," Aisha said. "I dropped him when Mama and I ran away. If it was pretend, my rabbit wouldn't have been there." The logic was childlike but sound. Several jurors nodded. Robert tried different angles. Had anyone told her what to say? No. Had she practiced this story? Only with Dr. Foster to not be scared. Could she have been confused about what she saw? No, Aisha said firmly. They had 2 folders. They switched the papers. I saw it. Robert held up 2 identical folders. Can you show us what you saw? Without hesitation, Aisha demonstrated, pulling imaginary papers from one folder and putting them in the other, then reversing the process. Her movements matched the security footage exactly. No further questions, Robert said, looking frustrated. Aisha was excused. She climbed down from the stand and went straight to Brielle, who hugged her tight. Did I do good, Mama? Aisha whispered. You did perfect, baby, Brielle said, her voice thick with emotion. So perfect. Julian joined them, pulling them both into his arms. She was incredible, he murmured. Absolutely incredible. As they left the courtroom, heading to the private waiting room, Brielle felt something shift. The hardest part was over. Aisha had told her truth, and she'd done it with courage and clarity. Now they just had to wait for justice to be served. But watching her daughter skip down the courthouse hallway, singing a song about brave fish, Brielle already felt victorious. Because Aisha had faced something scary and come through it unscathed. She'd stood up for what was right, just like her mama had taught her. And that lesson, that legacy of integrity and courage, was worth more than any verdict. The trial stretched into its second week, and the tension was palpable. Richard Hayes and Susan Palmer's defense team worked overtime to discredit the prosecution's case, but their strategies were becoming increasingly desperate. On Monday, the defense called their own expert witness, a psychologist who testified about the unreliability of children's memories. Dr. Philip Warren sat in the witness stand, his gray suit immaculate, his voice authoritative. Children under the age of 7 have underdeveloped memory encoding, Dr. Warren explained. They're highly susceptible to suggestion, confabulation, and false memories. A 5-year-old cannot reliably distinguish between what they actually saw and what they think they saw. Brielle felt sick. This man was systematically dismantling Aisha's credibility, using fancy words and scientific studies. But during cross-examination, the prosecution struck back. Dr. Warren, Lisa Chin said calmly, in your expert opinion, can a 5-year-old accurately report a simple event they witnessed? In some circumstances, Dr. Warren hedged. Such as, if the event was straightforward, emotionally neutral, and not subject to adult influence. Would you say watching 2 adults exchange papers between folders qualifies as straightforward and emotionally neutral? Lisa asked. Dr. Warren paused. Potentially. And the child in question provided her testimony without adult coaching. In fact, she voluntarily approached Mr. Whitmore to tell him what she saw. Doesn't that suggest reliable observation rather than false memory? It's possible, Dr. Warren admitted reluctantly. Dr. Warren, have you reviewed the security footage that corroborates Aisha Thompson's testimony? I have. And does her description of events match what the security footage shows? Another pause. Yes, it does. No further questions, Lisa said with satisfaction. But the defense wasn't finished. They brought employees who testified that Richard and Susan were respected executives, pillars of the community, people who'd never do something so dishonest. They brought character witnesses who painted Richard as a devoted father and Susan as a charitable philanthropist. The most difficult moment came when the defense called a former co-worker of Brielle's to the stand. Margaret Chin, a woman who'd worked alongside Brielle in custodial services, took the oath with obvious reluctance. Miss Chin, Robert Green said, you worked with Brielle Thompson for approximately 8 months, correct? Yes, Margaret said quietly. And during that time, did Miss Thompson ever express resentment toward company executives? Objection, Lisa said immediately. Relevance. I'm establishing a potential motivation for fabrication, Robert argued. I'll allow it, the judge said. But tread carefully, Mr. Green. Miss Chin? Robert prompted. Margaret sighed. Brielle sometimes mentioned that it was hard, cleaning offices for people who made more in a day than she made in a month. But that's normal. Everyone feels that way sometimes. So she resented the executives? Robert pressed. No, Margaret said firmly. She was just being honest about the struggles. Brielle is a good person. She worked hard, took care of her daughter. She wasn't looking to cause trouble for anyone. But she did cause trouble, didn't she? Robert suggested. She accused 2 respected executives of serious crimes. She told the truth about what her daughter saw, Margaret corrected, her voice stronger now. I've known Brielle for years. She's not a liar. If she says something happened, it happened. The defense's attempt to paint Brielle as vindictive backfired. Margaret's testimony actually reinforced Brielle's character and credibility. But the stress was taking its toll. Brielle barely slept, picking at her meals, jumping at every phone call from the courthouse. Aisha noticed, asking why Mama looked so worried all the time. I'm okay, baby, Brielle assured her. Just thinking about grown-up things. Julian was her rock through it all. He canceled meetings to sit with her during testimony. He held her when she cried from the stress. He reminded her daily that they were doing the right thing. They're scared, Julian said after a particularly brutal day of defense testimony. Richard and Susan know the evidence is solid. So they're attacking anything they can. Your character, Aisha's memory, the investigation procedures. It's desperation. What if the jury believes them? Brielle asked. What if they think we made this all up? Look at me, Julian said, cupping her face in his hands. The jury has seen the security footage. They've heard the forensic accountants. They've seen Aisha's honesty. Truth wins, Brielle. It always does. I want to believe that, she whispered. Then believe in us, Julian said. Believe in what we've built. This trial doesn't define us. We define ourselves. That night, as Brielle lay awake worrying, Julian came to find her on the balcony where she'd been sitting in the dark. I've been thinking, Julian said, settling beside her, about what happens after all this is over. We don't know how it will end, Brielle said. I know how I want it to end, Julian said. With you becoming my wife. Brielle turned to stare at him. What? Marry me, Julian said simply. Not right now, not in the middle of all this chaos. But after. When the trial is over and we can breathe again. Marry me, Brielle. Let me be Aisha's father legally, not just in my heart. Let's build the family we both want. Julian, Brielle's voice broke. You can't propose now. Not with everything. Why not? Julian challenged. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. I love you. I love Aisha. I want to wake up every morning knowing we're a family in every possible way. So yes, I'm proposing now in the middle of chaos, because that's when love matters most. You're crazy, Brielle said, but she was smiling through her tears. Crazy about you, Julian agreed. So what do you say? Will you marry me? Brielle looked at this man who'd changed her life so completely. Who'd believed in her and her daughter when no one else would. Who'd stood beside them through suspicion and trial and stress. Who'd shown her what real love looked like. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Julian kissed her then, deep and thorough, sealing the promise between them. When they finally pulled apart, he said, I'll get you a ring after the trial. Something beautiful and perfect just like you. I don't need a fancy ring, Brielle said. I just need you. You'll have both, Julian promised. The ring and me. Forever. The next morning they woke to news that sent shockwaves through the trial. Susan Palmer's lawyer had contacted the prosecution with a plea deal offer. Susan was willing to testify against Richard in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's breaking, Lisa Chin told them at the courthouse. The evidence is too strong and she knows it. She wants to save herself. What does this mean for the trial? Julian asked. It means we have a cooperating witness, Lisa said. Someone who can testify about the fraud from the inside. It strengthens our case considerably. Richard Hayes' lawyer tried to get the trial delayed, arguing that Susan's deal prejudiced his client, but the judge denied the motion. The trial would proceed. Susan took the stand 2 days later, and her testimony was damning. She confirmed every detail Aisha had reported. She explained how the scheme had worked, how they'd chosen which contracts to tamper with, how they'd hidden the money. She admitted to everything. It was Richard's idea, Susan said, though even she didn't seem to fully believe her own attempt to shift blame. But I went along with it. I'm guilty. I know that. I just want to take responsibility now. By the time Susan finished testifying, Richard's defense was in shambles. His lawyers scrambled, but there was little they could do. The evidence was overwhelming, and now they had an insider confirming it all. The prosecution rested their case the following day. The defense made their closing arguments, but they felt hollow. Everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Brielle cried when she heard the verdict, relief flooding through her like a physical wave. Julian held her tight, whispering reassurances and love. Aisha, who'd been waiting with Dr. Foster in a separate room, came running when she saw her mother's tears. It's okay, Mama, Aisha said, patting her face. These are happy tears, right? Yes, baby, Brielle managed. Very happy tears. Julian knelt down to Aisha's level. You did it, sweetheart. You told the truth and you helped catch the bad guys. You're a hero. Really? Aisha's eyes went wide. Really, Julian confirmed. The bravest girl I know. As they left the courthouse, reporters called out questions, cameras flashed, but Julian shielded them both, getting them to the car and away from the chaos. That evening, safe in the penthouse with Chinese takeout and animated movies, they finally relaxed. The trial was over. Justice had been served. Richard and Susan would face significant prison time. I can't believe it's actually over, Brielle said, curled up against Julian on the couch while Aisha dozed beside them. It's over, Julian confirmed. And now we can focus on what really matters. Our future. Our family. Our life together. When should we tell Aisha about the engagement? Brielle asked. Tomorrow, Julian said. Let's give her one more day to just be a kid who helped catch bad guys. Then we'll tell her she's getting a father. She already has one, Brielle said softly. You've been her father in every way that matters since the day we moved in. Then let's make it official, Julian said. All of it. The engagement, the adoption, the happily ever after. As Brielle drifted off to sleep that night, she thought about how much had changed since that night Aisha witnessed the folder game. A moment of innocent observation had transformed their entire lives, setting in motion events that led to justice, love, and family. Sometimes the smallest voices carried the most important messages. Sometimes the truth, spoken by a child, had the power to change everything. And sometimes fairy tales were real after all. The weekend after the verdict felt like the first real breath Brielle had taken in months. No more trial preparations, no more testimony, no more anxiety about what would happen in court. Just peace. Julian had planned a surprise getaway to a lakeside cottage 2 hours from the city. They'd left early Saturday morning, Aisha excited about the adventure, and Brielle grateful for the escape. The cottage was perfect, rustic but comfortable, with a wide porch overlooking the water. Trees surrounded them, their leaves brilliant red and gold in the autumn sunshine. It was private, peaceful, and exactly what they all needed. "This is beautiful," Brielle said, standing on the porch while Julian unpacked the car and Aisha explored the dock. "I thought we could all use a break from the city," Julian said, joining her. "Just the three of us, no phones, no obligations. Just time together." They spent the day like a real family. Julian taught Aisha how to skip stones across the lake. They went hiking on a gentle trail, with Aisha collecting interesting leaves and rocks. They roasted hot dogs over a fire pit and made s'mores, Aisha getting chocolate and marshmallow everywhere. "This is the best day ever," Aisha announced, her face sticky with sugar. "Can we live here forever?" "Maybe someday," Julian said. "Would you like that? A house by a lake where you could swim in summer and play in snow in winter?" "Yes," Aisha said firmly. "And we could have more fish. Big ones in the lake." After dinner, Aisha crashed hard, exhausted from the day's activities. Julian carried her to the bedroom they'd set up for her, tucking her in with Mr. Grumpy the rabbit. "Sweet dreams, princess," he whispered, kissing her forehead. Brielle watched from the doorway, her heart full. This was her family. This was what happiness looked like. They returned to the porch, where Julian had set up battery-powered lanterns and brought out blankets against the evening chill. The lake reflected the stars, creating a mirror of lights that seemed to go on forever. "Thank you for this," Brielle said, settling into Julian's arms. "For everything. I keep waiting to wake up and find out this was all a dream." "It's real," Julian assured her. "Very real. And Brielle, there's something I want to talk to you about." His tone made her turn to look at him. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Julian said quickly. "But I want to be honest with you about something. About my life before you." Brielle waited, giving him space to continue. "I've dated a lot of women," Julian said carefully. "Probably more than I should have. Models, actresses, executives. But they were all—" He paused, searching for words. "Transactions, I guess. They wanted something from me, money or status or connections, and I wanted someone beautiful on my arm for events. It was shallow and empty, but it was easy." "Julian, you don't have to," Brielle started. "I do," Julian said. "Because I need you to understand how different this is. How different you are. When you came into my life, when Aisha told me about the folder game, everything changed. Suddenly I was meeting someone who didn't want anything from me. Who was terrified I'd take things away from her instead. Who just wanted to protect her daughter and do the right thing." He took her hands. "You saw me as a person, Brielle. Not as a billionaire or a CEO or a potential opportunity. Just as a man. And when I offered to help, you resisted because you didn't want to feel like you owed me. Do you know how rare that is?" "I was just being myself," Brielle said softly. "Exactly," Julian said. "You were being real. And I fell in love with that reality. With your strength and your integrity and your fierce love for your daughter. With the way you challenged me to be better, to use my resources for good, to think about what really matters." He pulled her closer. "I've never felt this way before. This, complete. Like my life finally makes sense. Like all the money and success means something because I can share it with you and Aisha. Because I can help build your community center and watch you help other people. Because I get to be part of something real and meaningful instead of just accumulating more wealth." Tears slipped down Brielle's cheeks. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Julian said. "More than I knew I could love anyone. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that every single day." They sat in silence for a while, wrapped in each other's arms, listening to the gentle lap of water against the shore. "I have fears too," Brielle admitted. "About all of this. I keep thinking about the difference in our backgrounds, our worlds. I'm terrified that someday you'll wake up and realize you could have had someone more polished, more sophisticated. Someone who knows which fork to use at fancy dinners and how to make conversation with board members." "Brielle," Julian said firmly, I don't want polished and sophisticated. I want real. I want someone who calls me out when I'm being too focused on work. I want someone who reminds me that people matter more than profits. I want someone who makes me laugh at aquarium stores and teaches me that the best evenings are spent eating pizza on the floor while watching cartoons with a 5-year-old. He tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. I want you. Exactly as you are. I don't need you to change or become someone else. You're already perfect. I'm far from perfect, Brielle said with a watery laugh. Perfect for me, Julian clarified. And perfect for Aisha. Which is all that matters. When are we going to tell her? Brielle asked. About the engagement? Tomorrow morning, Julian said. I want her to be part of this from the beginning. I want her to know that I'm choosing both of you, committing to both of you. That I want to be her father, not just her mother's husband. She's going to be so excited, Brielle said. She already thinks of you that way, you know. The other day at daycare, she told her teacher that Julian was going to be her daddy soon. Julian's eyes shone with emotion. Really? Really? Brielle confirmed. She's been waiting for you to make it official. Then I won't make her wait any longer, Julian promised. They stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. Their hopes for the future, memories from their pasts, dreams for the community center, plans for the wedding. By the time they went to bed, Brielle felt more connected to Julian than ever before. This was what real love felt like. Not the desperate need of her youth or the cautious hope of early dating. This was solid and certain, built on honesty and respect and genuine care. This was forever love. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Aisha woke early, bouncing on Brielle's bed and begging to go feed the ducks she'd seen at the lake. Okay, Brielle laughed, pulling on warm clothes. Let Julian wake up first. I'm awake, Julian called from the other bedroom. Give me 5 minutes and we'll go feed those ducks. They walked down to the shore together, Aisha between them holding both their hands. Julian had brought stale bread specifically for this purpose, and they spent a happy half-hour tossing pieces to the eager ducks that gathered around them. Aisha, Julian said, kneeling down to her level. Your mom and I want to talk to you about something important. Aisha's eyes went wide. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, Brielle said. The opposite. We have really good news. I've asked your mom to marry me, Julian said. And she said yes. But I wanted to ask you something too. Aisha, would it be okay with you if I became your dad? If I adopted you and became your father officially? For a moment, Aisha just stared at him. Then her face broke into the biggest smile Brielle had ever seen. Really? You want to be my dad? More than anything, Julian said. If that's okay with you. Aisha launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Yes. I want you to be my dad. I told everyone at school you were going to be, and they didn't believe me, but now it's real. Julian held her tight and Brielle saw tears in his eyes. It's real, princess. I promise. Can I call you daddy? Aisha asked. I would love that, Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. Daddy? Aisha tested the word, then said it again with more confidence. Daddy. I have a daddy now, Mama. Brielle joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them. Her family. Complete at last. They spent the rest of the morning celebrating with a special breakfast at a diner in the nearby town, where Aisha announced to the waitress that she was getting a daddy. They explored a small art fair, where Julian bought Aisha a watercolor painting of the lake. They walked and talked and laughed, and Brielle felt like her heart might burst from happiness. On the drive home that evening, Aisha fell asleep in her car seat, exhausted but wearing a smile even in sleep. Best weekend of my life, Julian said quietly, glancing at Brielle. Mine too, she agreed. Thank you for giving us this. For being the man you are. Thank you for letting me in, Julian said. For trusting me with your heart and your daughter. I won't let you down, Brielle. I promise. I know you won't, she said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. As they drove through the darkening evening toward home, Brielle reflected on the journey that had brought them here. One night of witnessing wrongdoing. One brave choice to speak up. One billionaire who listened to the truth spoken by a child. From that small moment of courage, everything had grown. Justice, love, family, hope. All of it connected, all of it real. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest actions. Sometimes standing up for what was right led to rewards beyond imagination. And sometimes, love found you exactly when you needed it most, bringing healing and joy and a future full of promise. Brielle was ready for that future. With Julian beside her and Aisha safely in their care, she was ready for anything. The confession of love, freely given and gratefully received, had sealed their bond. Now came the best part, living it out, day by day, moment by moment, forever. The months after the trial verdict passed in a blur of happiness and new beginnings. Richard Hayes and Susan Palmer were sentenced to 15 and 12 years in prison, respectively, with requirements to pay back everything they'd stolen. The judge praised Aisha's courage during sentencing, calling her a model of integrity and honesty that adults would do well to emulate. But the real celebration happened at Whitmore Industries during a company-wide meeting. Julian had called to announce changes and share good news. Over the past 6 months, Julian said, addressing the packed auditorium, we've faced a difficult truth about corruption within our company. But we've also witnessed extraordinary courage and integrity. Because of one 5-year-old girl and her brave mother, we stopped a fraud that would have eventually threatened every job in this company. He gestured to Brielle, who stood with him on stage, Aisha beside her in a bright red dress. Brielle Thompson started here as a janitor. Today, she's not only our facilities coordinator but a partner in a new community initiative Whitmore Industries is launching. We're funding and supporting the Thompson Community Center, which will provide resources, education, and support for single parents throughout our city. The applause was thunderous. Brielle had to wipe away tears as her colleagues and former co-workers celebrated her achievement. But that's not all we're celebrating today, Julian continued. He turned to Brielle and took her hand. Brielle has agreed to become my wife. More applause, this time mixed with cheers. Someone whistled. And Aisha, Julian knelt down to the little girl's level, is going to become my daughter. The adoption paperwork is already in progress. Aisha grabbed the microphone with the confidence only a 6-year-old could have. I'm getting a daddy, she announced proudly. And he's really nice and he knows all about fish. The entire auditorium erupted in laughter and applause. After the meeting, employees lined up to congratulate them. The woman from HR who'd first approached Brielle at the picnic hugged her tightly. You've changed so many lives, Janet said. Not just by stopping the fraud but by showing us what real integrity looks like. Margaret, Brielle's former co-worker, was there too. I always knew you were special, she said. I'm so happy for you. The community center opened 3 months later. It was housed in the building Julian had purchased, but Brielle had transformed it into something beautiful. There were childcare facilities for parents who needed to work or attend classes, computer labs for job searches and skill development, meeting rooms for support groups, financial counseling services, educational programs. The grand opening was covered by local news. Brielle gave an interview with Aisha playing in the background and Julian standing proudly beside her. This center exists because of one simple truth, Brielle told the reporter. When we help each other, when we lift each other up, everyone benefits. I was a single mother struggling to survive. Now I'm in a position to help others in that same situation. And I'll never forget what it felt like to be on the other side. What advice would you give to single parents who are struggling right now? The reporter asked. Don't give up, Brielle said firmly. Ask for help when you need it. Accept help when it's offered. And teach your children to tell the truth no matter what. You never know what might come from one moment of honesty. She glanced at Aisha, who was showing the camera crew her favorite painting on the wall. My daughter's courage changed our lives. She saw something wrong and told someone who could fix it. That's the most important lesson I hope this center teaches. Use your voice. Stand up for what's right. The truth matters. Are you teaching your children the values of honesty and courage? What legacy are you building for the next generation? Share this story with someone who needs hope today, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales. Because sometimes the smallest voices change the world. The wedding took place in early June, in a garden venue that could accommodate the 300 guests Julian and Brielle had invited. It was a mix of corporate executives, former janitors, single mothers from the community center, and Aisha's entire kindergarten class. Brielle walked down the aisle in a beautiful but simple white dress with blue accents, her choice because she wanted to look like herself, not a princess from someone else's fairy tale. Julian had given her a ring with a single diamond, elegant but not ostentatious, exactly what she would have chosen. But the most important moment came when Aisha, serving as flower girl in a maroon dress she'd picked out herself, reached the altar. The ceremony paused and Julian knelt down. Aisha, I'm not just marrying your mother today, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm committing to being your father forever. I promise to love you, protect you, support you, and be there for every moment of your life. You made this family possible by being brave enough to tell the truth. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how special you are. He pulled out a small box and opened it, revealing a delicate necklace with a heart pendant. This is my promise to you. Will you accept it? Aisha nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Julian fastened the necklace around her neck, then pulled her into a tight hug. There wasn't a dry eye in the venue. The ceremony itself was beautiful. They'd written their own vows. Brielle promised to be Julian's partner, supporter, and honest voice. Julian promised to honor, cherish, and build a life of meaning with her. When they kissed, Aisha cheered loudly, making everyone laugh. The reception was a celebration of love and community. The company executives mingled with single mothers from the center. Former janitors danced with board members. Janet from HR gave a toast about how Brielle had shown everyone that character mattered more than position. Dr. Foster spoke about Aisha's remarkable courage and honesty. But the best speech came from Aisha herself, who grabbed the microphone during dinner. I want to say something, she announced. The room went quiet, waiting. When I saw those people switching folders, I was scared. But Mama taught me to always tell the truth. So I told Julian. And then everything changed. We got a new house and new friends, and Mama got a new job. And I got a daddy who loves us. She paused, looking at Julian and Brielle. Mama says good things happen to good people. I think she's right. Because we were good and told the truth, and now we're happy. So everyone should tell the truth too. Then we can all be happy. The room erupted in applause. Julian scooped Aisha into his arms, kissing her cheek. Out of the mouths of babes, he murmured to Brielle. She's right though, Brielle said. Good things do happen to good people. We're living proof. The adoption was finalized a month after the wedding. Julian, Brielle, and Aisha stood in family court while a judge made it official. Aisha Thompson was now Aisha Thompson Whitmore, daughter of Julian and Brielle Whitmore. Congratulations to your family, the judge said with a warm smile. You're a remarkable young lady, Aisha. Your courage has inspired a lot of people. Thank you, Aisha said politely. Then she looked up at Julian. Am I really your daughter now? For real and forever? For real and forever, Julian confirmed. Nothing can change that. Good, Aisha said with satisfaction. Because I was going to be really sad if you left. I'm never leaving, Julian promised. You're stuck with me. That's okay, Aisha said. I like being stuck with you. That evening they celebrated with dinner at home. Just the three of them, sitting around the dining table in the penthouse that no longer felt too big or too empty. It felt like home. I've been thinking, Julian said, about that lake house. The cottage where we stayed that weekend. What if we bought something like that? A place to escape to on weekends, where Aisha can run around and we can just be a family. I'd love that, Brielle said. Somewhere simple and peaceful. With lots of fish in the lake, Aisha added. With lots of fish, Julian agreed, laughing. Later, after Aisha was asleep, Julian and Brielle sat on their balcony overlooking the city. It had become their favorite place to talk, to plan, to dream. Do you ever think about that night? Julian asked. When Aisha saw them switching folders? All the time, Brielle admitted. I think about how scared I was. How close I came to just keeping quiet and hoping it would go away. But you didn't, Julian said. You found the courage to speak up. To let Aisha tell the truth. And that changed everything. It changed me, Brielle said. I used to think I was nobody. Just a single mother barely getting by, invisible to the world. But that night taught me that I matter. My voice matters. Aisha's voice matters. You were never nobody, Julian said firmly. You were always someone remarkable. You just needed the chance to show it. And you gave me that chance, Brielle said. You listened. You believed us. You changed our lives, Julian. You changed mine, Julian corrected. Before you, I was just a rich man building a company. Now I'm a husband and father building a life that means something. You gave me purpose beyond profit. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below them. I'm writing a book, Brielle said suddenly. About the experience. About being a single mother who witnessed corporate fraud. About raising a child to tell the truth. About building a community center and a new life. I want other people to know that change is possible, that courage is rewarded, that good things can come from hard moments. That's wonderful, Julian said. What are you going to call it? Brielle smiled. The folder game. Because that's what started it all. A 5-year-old's description of something she didn't fully understand but knew was wrong. Perfect, Julian said. And all the proceeds can go to the community center. I was hoping you'd say that, Brielle said with a laugh. We're partners, Julian reminded her. In everything. Your dreams are my dreams. Your goals are my goals. We build this life together. Together, Brielle agreed. 5 years later, the Thompson Community Center had expanded to 3 locations. Brielle's book had become a bestseller, inspiring similar programs across the country. Aisha was 10, thriving in school and volunteering at the center's childcare program. She'd announced that when she grew up, she wanted to be a lawyer so she could help people tell the truth and catch bad guys. Julian had restructured Whitmore Industries to focus on ethical practices and community investment. The company's value had actually increased once investors realized that integrity could be profitable. He and Brielle had become known as a power couple who used their resources to make real change. But the most important changes were the small ones. Family dinners every night. Weekend trips to their lake house. Reading bedtime stories to Aisha, who was almost too old for them but still enjoyed the routine. Teaching Aisha to swim, to ride a bike, to stand up for what she believed in. One evening, as they celebrated the community center's 5th anniversary, a young woman approached Brielle during the event. You don't know me, the woman said, but I wanted to thank you. 5 years ago, I was a single mother living in my car with my 2 kids. I came to your center desperate and afraid. You helped me find housing, get job training, rebuild my life. Now I have a good job, a home, and my kids are doing great in school. You changed our lives. Brielle hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes. You changed your own life. You had the courage to ask for help and the determination to succeed. I just provided resources. You provided hope, the woman corrected. You showed me that people like us matter. That we're worth investing in. After she left, Julian wrapped his arm around Brielle's shoulders. You hear that all the time now, don't you? Stories of lives changed. It never gets old, Brielle said. Every person we help, every family we support, it all traces back to that one night when Aisha told the truth. One moment of courage that rippled outward and touched hundreds of lives. Thousands, Julian corrected. With the book and the speaking tours and the other centers that have opened using your model. Thousands of lives changed because a 5-year-old girl saw something wrong and had the courage to speak up. That night, back home, Aisha showed them her school project. She'd made a poster board about family heroes. My hero is my mom, Aisha had written in careful letters. She taught me to always tell the truth even when it's scary. She was a janitor, but she didn't let that stop her from being brave. She saw people doing bad things and she told. Then everything changed for us. Now she helps other people who need help. She's my hero because she shows me that anyone can be brave and make a difference. You don't have to be rich or famous. You just have to care about doing what's right. Below the text was a drawing of Brielle in her old janitor uniform, holding Aisha's hand, with a speech bubble saying, "The truth matters." Brielle couldn't stop the tears. Oh baby. This is beautiful. It's true, Aisha said simply. You're my hero, Mom. You and Dad both. You taught me that being honest and kind and helpful is more important than being rich or pretty or popular. You're all 3, Julian said, pulling Aisha into a hug. Honest, kind, helpful, and the smartest, most beautiful daughter anyone could ask for. And rich now, Aisha added practically. Which is nice because we have the big house and the lake house and I can go to good schools. But Mom always says we're rich because we have each other, not because we have money. Your mom is very wise, Julian said, looking at Brielle with so much love it made her heart ache. That night, after Aisha was in bed, Julian and Brielle returned to their usual spot on the balcony. 10 years had passed since that fateful night. A decade of growth, change, challenge, and triumph. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Aisha hadn't seen them? Brielle asked. If we hadn't spoken up? Sometimes, Julian admitted. Richard and Susan would have kept stealing. Eventually, the company might have collapsed. Lives would have been ruined. And you and I would have never met. Everything happens for a reason, Brielle said. Not because it's predetermined, but because our choices create our reality. We chose honesty. We chose courage. And those choices led us here. To the best life I could have imagined, Julian said. With the best partner, the best daughter, the best purpose. You gave me all of that, Brielle. We gave it to each other, Brielle corrected. And to Aisha. We built this together. Together, Julian agreed, kissing her softly. Always together. As they looked out over the city, lights stretching to the horizon, Brielle thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a terrified janitor to a confident community leader. From a single mother struggling to survive to a woman with the resources to help thousands. From loneliness to love, from fear to family, from survival to purpose. All because a 5-year-old girl witnessed a crime and told the truth. All because a mother found the courage to support her daughter's honesty. All because a billionaire chose to listen and believe. The folder game, as Aisha had called it, had been the catalyst for everything. A simple act of fraud witnessed by innocent eyes, reported by a truthful voice, and addressed by someone with the power to make change. From that small seed, a mighty tree had grown. A tree that sheltered hundreds of families, provided hope to struggling parents, and proved that integrity, honesty, and courage were values that truly mattered. Brielle Thompson Whitmore fell asleep that night, wrapped in her husband's arms, grateful for every moment that had led to this point. Grateful for truth-telling daughters and listening billionaires. Grateful for second chances and new beginnings. Grateful for a life built on a foundation of honesty and love. And in her dreams she saw folders being switched, heard a child's innocent voice saying, "I saw them," and watched as that simple truth transformed everything, proving that sometimes the smallest voices carried the most important messages, and the most ordinary people possessed the most extraordinary courage. The end was really just the beginning. A beginning of a life lived with purpose, love, and the enduring belief that good things happen to good people who find the courage to tell the truth and the wisdom to accept help when it's offered. This was their happy ending. Hard-won, well-deserved, and absolutely real. Forever and always,